Hey everyone, welcome to Family Story Time. I'm Dan, and I'm whispering because it's actually nighttime right now, as you can see from the moon behind me. This week's story time is all about nocturnal animals. And what are nocturnal animals actually? Well, they're animals that are most active at nighttime when the rest of us are asleep. These can be animals like deer, bears, bats, owls, raccoons, skunks, foxes, porcupines, opossums, even crocodiles. Now that doesn't mean that these animals aren't also active during the daytime. It just means that they do most of their traveling and their hunting and their foraging at nighttime. We're going to see a lot of these animals and more in today's stories. So let's jump in and get started. Our first story today is called The Mouse and the Moon, because mice are nocturnal animals, so they're most active at night, even if you do see them in the daytime sometimes. In a dark and broken tree, in a dark and wild wood, there lived a little mouse, all alone. His only friend was the moon. Each night the moon appeared, the little mouse would talk to his friend about his news, his hopes, and his fears. But the moon never replied. The little mouse wondered if maybe the moon was just too far away to hear him. So the little mouse set off to find his friend. That's a brave little mouse. The little mouse ran and ran through the wild wood. The moon was always above, and it didn't get any closer. Soon, the mouse was as far from home as he'd ever been, and he was feeling a little afraid. I would too, running through the woods at nighttime all by myself. Sounds kind of scary. The little mouse stopped to rest. He searched the night sky for his friend, but the moon was nowhere to be seen. Until... "Hello?" a small voice whispered, so quietly that even with his big ears, the little mouse could barely hear it. The mouse crept forward and peered around a tree. "Hello?" the little mouse called back. And there, floating in a small, still pool, was the moon. The mouse couldn't believe it. He found his friend at last. Hidden from sight, beneath the moon's reflection, there lived a tiny fish. The tiny fish couldn't believe it. His friend, the moon, was speaking to him at last. So the fish also thinks his friend is the moon. "I've been waiting so long to talk to you," bubbled the tiny fish. "Me too," squeaked the little mouse. "I'm so glad to meet you." They stayed up all night, talking of this and that, and that and this. As they talked, the sky became lighter and lighter. Dawn was coming. The sky brightened, and the moon grew fainter. What do you think will happen? "Oh no," they both cried. "Please don't go." The little mouse moved as close as he could to the moon. The tiny fish swam up as close as he dared to the surface. Then the moon vanished. It's morning, and the two new friends saw each other for the very first time. One above, one below. Both together and both happy. Ah, that's a nice ending. The fish and the mouse found a friend in one another. Well, before we jump into our next nocturnal animal tale, let's go to Tara for a nighttime rhyme.
Have you ever gone camping before? If so, you've probably slept in the woods and heard a lot of interesting sounds at night. Now with our rhyme today, we're going to see if we can identify some nocturnal animal sounds as they come up. I'm going to ask for you to sing a song with me. Let's start by putting our hands by our head like we're going to go to sleep. Except we can't get to sleep because of all the noises. I was lying in my sleeping bag, I couldn't get to sleep. The wind began to howl and the bugs began to creep. I rolled to the left and I rolled to the right, and I listened to the sounds that you hear at night. And I heard, hoo, hoo. What did I hear? Hoo, hoo. An owl is near. Did you guess an owl with the whoos? Very good. All right, hands back up by your head. We're getting ready to sleep again. I was lying in my sleeping bag, I couldn't get to sleep. The wind began to howl and the bugs began to creep. I rolled to the left and I rolled to the right, and I listened to the sounds that you hear at night. And I heard, aroo, aroo. What did I hear? Aroo, aroo. A coyote is near. Fabulous. So we have an owl, whoo, and a coyote, aroo. I was lying in my sleeping bag, I couldn't get to sleep. The wind began to howl and the bugs began to creep. I rolled to the left and I rolled to the right, and I listened to the sounds that you hear at night. And I heard, squeak, 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 squeak. What did I hear? Squeak, 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 squeak. A mouse is near. Squeak, squeak. Aroo, hoo, hoo. So many sounds that I heard at night. I was lying in my sleeping bag, I couldn't get to sleep. The wind began to howl and the bugs began to creep. I rolled to the left and I rolled to the right, and I listened to the sounds that you hear at night. And I heard, ribbit, 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 ribbit. What did I hear? Ribbit, ribbit. A frog is near. Ribbit, ribbit. Squeak, squeak, aroo, hoo, hoo. So many sounds. I was lying in my sleeping bag, I couldn't get to sleep. The wind began to howl and the bugs began to creep. I rolled to the left and I rolled to the right, and I listened to the sounds that you hear at night. And this time I heard, flap, 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 flap. What could be flapping its wings? Flap, 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 flap. A bat is near. All right, so I had the flapping, the squeak, squeak, the aroo, the ribbit, ribbit, and the hoo, hoo. Can you do all of those sounds? I think so. I was lying in my sleeping bag, I couldn't get to sleep. The wind began to howl and the bugs began to creep. I rolled to the left and I rolled to the right, and I smelled the worst smell you could smell at night. What makes smells? What makes yucky smells that makes you say, pee, you? A skunk was near. Oh no. Now that you've helped me figure out what these animals are making all of these noises, maybe I can get a good night's sleep. But I think that I'd rather hear a story first. Let's go to Dan for another story that involves some of these critters and a camper.
So since nocturnal animals are awake most of the night, that means they do most of their sleeping during the day when the rest of us are awake. Our next story finds a group of night animals who need to find a nice, quiet, dark place to sleep. And it's called Night Animals Need Sleep Too. And we're going to see a lot of animals in this one. Hey, Possum. Well, what's wrong? Asked the skunk. It's too bright. I need somewhere dark and quiet to sleep, says the sleepy possum. How about we go sleep in that cave, says the skunk. Yeah, looks dark and quiet, says Possum. Possum, what is that buzzing sound? Asked the skunk. Bees! Shouts Possum. Ouch! Run! Says the bear. Oh no, they're being chased by a swarm of bees. Possum! Yells the bear. Watch out! Yells Skunk. What for? Asks Possum. Oh dear, says the skunk. Hey, how about we sleep in that tree? Asks the bear. Ah, yes, nice and peaceful, says Skunk. Do you guys hear something? Asked the bear. Timber! Yells the beaver. Beaver! Shouts Skunk. Uh-oh, says Possum. They're all falling out of the tree and... Oh no! Did I kill Possum? Asked Beaver. Possum, are you dead again? Asked Skunk. Go away, says Possum. When possums are scared, they usually play dead or pretend to be dead, so the predator will go away. I think that Possum was just stunned in this case. Oh, Possum, I'm so sorry you're dead, says Beaver. Yeah, he does that sometimes, says Bear. Hey, this den is nice and dark. Come on down, says Skunk, crawling into the den. Ooh, they're going underground. Something is down here, says Beaver as he crawls into the den. Hey, what's that smell? Asks something in the den. Pfft. Uh-oh. Skunk sprayed all over in the den. Ugh, P.U. Skunks don't belong in wolf dens, coughs the wolf, crawling out of the den. Hey, that looks cozy and quiet, says Beaver, pointing to a tent in the woods. Hey, can you move over? Says Possum. Possum, you're alive, says Beaver. Hey, do you guys hear something? Asks Bear. What do you think's outside the tent? The tent zips open. And who's outside? Uh-oh. Skunk sprays again all over in the tent this time. Night animals! Shout the campers as they run off into the woods. Oh, there runs Beaver and Skunk and Bear and Wolf. Run! Yells the skunk. Run! Yells Wolf. And Possum stays behind, playing dead. We'll never get any sleep, says the Beaver. Sleep? It's almost dark, says the Bat. Almost dark? Says Bear. Yep, time for night animals to wake up, says the Bat. And off into the distance we hear a hoo, hoo, hoo of an owl. And Possum finally wakes up in the tent all alone. And that was Night Animals Need Sleep Too. Well, we just saw a bat, and speaking of bats, we have a creature in the aquarium called a batfish, and his name is Bruce. So let's go down to the aquarium and learn all about Bruce the batfish.
Hi everybody, this is Miss Taylor from the Marathon County Public Library. So I know there was a bat in our last book. Did you know that our aquarium here at MCPL has a batfish? Well, it does, and his name is Bruce. So let's go and learn a little bit more about Bruce the batfish.
Bruce the batfish moved into the aquarium at MCPL Wausau in the fall of 2019. Also called an orbicular, round, or circular batfish, these creatures are known for their flat, thin, dish-shaped bodies and for the prominent black stripes on their front half. Batfish like Bruce are found in waters across the Indian and Pacific Oceans. mostly in sheltered lagoons, coral reefs, and mangroves. When batfish are born, they look like floating leaves in the water, which helps them trick predators and avoid being eaten. They're generally very peaceful fish, and Bruce will often follow people outside the aquarium hoping for food. These fish are omnivores, meaning they eat both meat and plants. In the wild, they'll eat shrimp, mussels, scallops, seaweed, and algae. Batfish can grow 20 to 30 inches in length, and some have been known to live up to 14 years.
Thanks for joining me at the aquarium today. Now let's go back and hear our last story.
All right, so our last story for today is all about a very curious owl and his friend, the cricket, and the big adventure they go on together. And it's called Oliver the Curious Owl. The owl family had everything they needed in their big tree. It was very quiet and very safe, and they never ventured far. The only question they ever asked was, who? Who, 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 who? But Oliver was new to the family, and he had lots of other questions he wanted to ask, other than who. What, when, where, why? Soon, Oliver knew the answer to every question he had about being an owl. Now, he wanted to learn about life outside the big tree. Who lives in those faraway woods? He asked. No one knows, Oliver. Where does that river go, Dad? Don't leave the tree, Oliver, says his dad. Why can't I leave the tree, Mom? Well, you might get lost, Oliver. Eep, says a little cricket. Then one day, Oliver met someone else who also asked a lot of questions. Eep. My name? It's Oliver. Eep. I'm an owl. And what are you? What's your name? Eep, eep. Okay, so you're a bug whose name is Bug? Eep? No, I like it, says Oliver. Oliver and Bug became best friends. No one else seemed curious about the world outside the big tree except for them. Together, they could imagine who and what they might discover if they followed the river to its very end. But every time Bug suggested that they go exploring, Oliver decided that it was safer to stay home. He was afraid that they might get lost. Then, one night, Bug fell into the river and was quickly swept far from the big tree. Oliver didn't know what to do. He paced and hopped, and he chirped, chirped, chirped. And then he leaped from the big tree and chased after his friend. When Oliver reached the faraway woods, he was surrounded by strange new things. Lots of different kinds of flowers and plants. And he searched for Bug, and he met new animals too. Hi there. Why are we upside down? And why are your ears so big? And where does this river go? Oliver asked. Of course, he had lots of questions. What are you building? Why are you eating wood? He asked the beavers. You saw my friend float by? When? What are all those big teeth for? Why do your eyes aglow? He asked the crocodiles. A waterfall? Where? Oliver raced toward his friend as fast as he could. Bug! Shouted Oliver. He swooped down and scooped Bug up just in time. Whew, that was close. They burst from the cool darkness of the woods. It was the very end of the river, and it was more incredible than they ever had imagined. Oliver and Bug were very far from home, but they couldn't stop now. There's so much to see. They made new friends, tried new things, like riding on a whale, and explored new places with the crabs. They even ate new foods, some seaweed with a turtle, and now they were very, very far from home. They're even underwater swimming with a school of fish. And they never had so much fun in their entire lives. But suddenly, the sky turned dark. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The wind twisted and the rain fell harder. Everything looked strange and different. They were lost. Oliver began to think maybe he shouldn't have explored all day or gone so far from home. Maybe they should have just stayed in their big, safe tree. But then Bug had an idea. Eep! If they followed all of the who's, and the what's, and the when's, and the where's, and the why's that they had asked all day, it might lead them back to the big tree. It was strange. The big tree didn't seem quite so big now. Oliver's family had been very worried about them. They hugged him tight and told him to never leave home again. But that night, Oliver and Bug told their family all about the amazing world they had discovered beyond the big tree. And they said that they would be very sad if they never got to see it all again. So, the next day, everyone followed Oliver and Bug. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. They had lots of questions. And that was Oliver the Curious Owl. So Oliver taught his family that if they're just a little bit more adventurous, they can learn a lot about the outside world and see a lot of cool things too. Well, thanks for joining us today. I hope you liked learning about all of the different night animals, and remember to keep your eye out for some nocturnal animals that you may see during the daytime too. Until next time, have a good day.